What we're going to show here today is not just about reporting, because you've probably already got reporting tools and dashboards that might take care of that. What we're going to show is how we can integrate that reporting and to be able to put forecast budgets and plans together and then distribute that amongst our work colleagues and people throughout the business. We've all seen the income statement before, and here we've got an Excel-based report, but it's not a dead link. This is a bi-directional connection. So what that means is we've got live data coming from Dynamics, and we can click and change information in the model. So we can click, for example, no customer group or large business group, and that could be any segment that you've got in the business. And we're not limited to one. And this report dynamically updates. So then we can use that information to compare against our budgets and forecasts, which today are probably living in Excel. And we can use that to create snapshots and calculate percentages. And we're using a very powerful calculation engine to calculate any metrics and information that you need. And it's not just limited to the data from Dynamics. This can incorporate non-financial metrics, any other information that people typically would hold in, say, Excel or some other database application. Here we're just showing a detailed P&L, and we've got the months across the top, and we've got income statement running down the page. We can take that to the next level. See, we've got January, February, March, April, with the actual data coming from Dynamics. And now we're going to start putting some forecast data for May, July, through to the end of the year. If we go to the planning page, here we're going to put some rent expense into our income statement. We could go and actually type the value in. So we could say, for example, we think in September that the value for rent is going to be $5,000. We can punch it in. We just send that in and we can see that the calculation engine has taken that number and it's already added it up and down the page. So here we have an impact on our bottom line. We can also use the set function. Basically, we can add a method here and we can say set, and we can put the number in and we can say, okay, $7,500. We push that in and we get 7.5 is now spread across that period of time. And it wrote over the top of the 5,000 we typed in. We could then come back and say, oh, okay, well, that August number, maybe that's going to be a little lower. I can put 6,900. So this bidirectional calc is very, very flexible. And it's something that's actually quite difficult to do in Excel. So it allows us to effectively, rapidly deploy information. So we say, yep, let's set it to 7,500 and we'll go and make the tweaks that we need to do. And it saves a lot of time trying to put a forecast together. That information has already been computed, not just in the income statement, but impacts on the balance sheet. So as we enter items, it's affecting things like cash. It's already been incorporated into our cash position. We can set some terms so that any sort of income statement movements that we put in the model will come back and automatically impact cash and receivables and payables, etc. That creates an integrated cash flow statement, and we can see any outflows of cash and into the model. We can then create a dashboard here in Excel, and some people are comfortable with that, and you're able to use the information coming from the system to create that sort of that dashboard information. We also are not just limited to the general ledger information from Dynamics. We can also use, for example, the customer sales data. So here we're showing the individual items, their quantities, their amounts, and basic costs. And that allows us to provide further analysis of what's happening in the business. So we can use that selector, you can double click at the top, and we can pick an area of the business we want to focus on. Maybe there's no customer group. And we see that the content shifts to that relevant group. If I go back, you'll see that there's some differences between all. So it just depends on what you want to see. So it's not a one-way report. We're able to actively and dynamically select these things. We can also, like we did with the GL, we can actually use this to do sales planning. So we can look at a particular item. We can look at potentially customers as well. So we can do item by customer. And we can look at, for example, this particular product. It has a sell price of $192.80. And let's just make a large number to really make the graphs move. So if we put, say, 20,000 units, we push that in, the system calculates the revenue, the relative costs, gives us our margin and a margin percent. So we can check the validity or plausibility of that number. It's also adding up all of the items to the top line. And here we can see for the overall product, we've got 850,000 gross margin. But that data is not just sitting in Excel. We can distribute that information around. This is showing a combined actuals and forecast. So there's that spike in revenue that so we've got a GP of 850 and total income of 3.856, which is what we had calculated in our planning tab. And if we put that back down again, let's say 100 units, we can refresh. You can see that the data is live. There's no waiting for batch uploads, and that allows people to work together properly. So today you might have systems in place, but usually there's some sort of disconnect. It takes time to get that information. But if you've got, 10 people on your team or 1,000 people on your team, you need those people to be able to access that information so they can make changes and decisions in real time. There's a couple of extra modules built into the system. So we've got loans and assets, where you can just put some basic information about a loan, for example, the principal, the interest rate, when that loan's going to start, how many periods it'll run for, and the frequency of repayment. And it'll automatically calculate the information out. And that too goes back to the balance sheet and cash flow. So it's very useful if you need to plan initiatives, or you might need capital expenditure. You can work out what sort of finance or options, whether you can fund it from your own cash flow. And similarly with your assets, you can actually put separate assets in there, the original amount, the useful life, whether it's declining or straight line balance, and the rate of attack on your depreciation. And again, it's just a great way when you're trying to plan into the future, or if you're trying to manage your asset depreciation values. You don't have to do it in a disconnected spreadsheet. You can have it in the system, and that way everyone can share in that information. We can see what the real bottom line impacts will be. Other areas that as optional extras that you can draw from are accounts receivable and accounts payable. We can see by individual customer, any invoices and payments and adjustments. And we can actually make adjustments to when we think people are going to pay their amounts. So in this particular case, you might say, Trade Research, we're going to make an adjustment to their balance, and we'll make it minus 3,000, for example. And that's going to delay or adjust that value into the cash flow. Similarly with accounts payable, we can make adjustments to when we're due to pay things, or to bring an amount in or out. So we might say we're going to adjust out, say, minus 5,000 here. And we might say we're actually going to bring that back in again in 2 months' time. And that automatically will go back into the cash flow and allow us to control when we want to make payments. So overall, it gives us a very flexible model that we can sort of leverage this information in terms of balance sheet, cash flow, and relative sales performance of our modeling, and to analyze how our business works into the future. Basically, what's happening is we have our demo spreadsheet, or example P&L cash flow, and as we put the information from multiple users, it goes into our tool called Elation. And Elation is combining the data from Business Central and the data from Excel and distributing that via the Power BI in this particular case. But that could be any dashboarding system you have. It could be Tableau, it could be ClickView. We have our own Leonardo product as well. Overall, it gives us an architecture that allows lots of people to be able to use the system, gain access to the information for reporting, but also contribute in real time to create future forecast budgets and reports.